Hello, everybody. Everybody, hello. Welcome to the podcast. Congratulations to the 47th President of the United States, Dr. Cornel West. I'm Tracy. I'm going to let my guest introduce himself here in just a moment. You all know how this works on my platform. There will be no asking to like this page, subscribe to this page. We are simply talking about Dr. West. It's all about Dr. West and his campaign. So, that in mind, remember to visit the website at cornelwest2024.com where you can sign up to be a volunteer. You can learn more about the campaign, read the fantastic platform, and we are ready to go. I am going to ask my guest to introduce himself.
Yeah, hi, I'm Brad Lorton. I'm the former chair of the Central Indiana Local of Democratic Socialists of America. I was actually one of the founding chairs of the local, and I've been involved in numerous political and campaigns for causes and what have you. I started voting in 1972 at the age of 18. My first vote was for Senator McGovern, and more recently, I was a strong supporter of Senator Sanders. So, and I'm looking forward to questions, and we'll see how this goes.
So, everybody who's watched this show in the past know how this works. I take the five most ignorant arguments, and I mean really ignorant arguments against Dr. West running, and I ask my guests to respond to those. Um, that is what I do. But I always ask this question: with as many independents, which I'm pretty glad about, that are running this time around, why Dr. West as opposed to someone else?
Why Dr. West as opposed to someone else? For me, it's personal. I mean, I've met Cornel West over 30 years ago. I've seen him speak several times. And he was the national co-chair of the Democratic Socialists of America for many, many years. And so his platform is so much in line with what I believe in that, that's the most important thing. Things like national health care, things like um, reducing labor time, uh, things like peace, which very important right now with what's going on in the Middle East. And the Democrats and the Republicans basically tend to be corporate entities and give a corporate view of the world. I think it's time for a worker's view of the world. It goes into a great deal of, that goes into the interests of common working people in their diversity. There are, workers in the United States, people who don't have capital, that have only their labor to survive. And that includes 90-some% of us. And there is a commonness of interest. And Dr. West's platform, for certain, with all the other attributes he has, Dr. West's platform is very, very, very much in line with my view of the world.
So, thank you for that. I agree. I'm in 100% agreement. So, the first sort of silly, and trust me, you're going to hear about some of the silliest arguments um, that I've literally have had to like pause myself on Facebook because I can't believe some of the things I'm reading. So the first one that I think is the most ignorant argument that I've ever heard is Dr. West is pretty much guaranteeing that Donald Trump will be president by taking away votes from Biden.
Well, first of all, let me just say, I mean, right off the bat, I don't I don't judge anybody for having those feelings. I don't want Trump back. I would fight Trump to the death if he got back. Now, I guess in the state of Indiana, we got it kind of easy because this is a Republican state. I'm 69 years old. I started voting in 1972. In my whole lifetime, my whole adult lifetime, here voting in the state of Indiana, my vote has counted in the Electoral College once for President Obama in 2008. That was it. That's the whole time. That's what we face here in Indiana. Indiana, if God help us, if any of the major party candidates actually needs Indiana because it's going to Trump. Okay. God help us if Indiana is necessarily the difference. This is a rough state. But it's also important, I think, that, and I want to make this real clear, because the most important thing of all is not so much election day, but as after election day. Because we're going to have a government. And no matter who wins, no matter what happens next November 5th, there's going to be struggle. There is going to be struggle for justice. There's going to especially be struggle for justice for oppressed people, as Dr. West would put it. And there's going to be struggle just in our daily lives. And we all on the progressive side of these things need to stick together, because whether or not we elect a president, we are still going to have to be fighting for the same ideals, the same principles, the same policies. And we need to organize ourselves in order to gain it. So it is extremely important that that these progressive people can coalesce around ideas, around candidates, and around each other, making the connections, so that come 2025, we can be effective. Good Lord, because if Dr. West would win, we'd still have a struggle because the right wing would be fighting us every inch of the way. The Democrats would probably wouldn't be all that friendly either. And if, God forbid, Trump wins, we have a struggle. We have a serious struggle in this country just to keep basic democratic freedoms. So I think that that you've got some reason, and if you're worried in the state of Indiana that you're going to stop Trump from winning or help Trump win Indiana, I don't think that's a big consideration here.
Okay, so you went a little left with that question, because what I would say is, because this podcast is always seen by people outside the state. Now we know in Indiana, basically, I want Dr. West to win Indiana,
Right.
no doubt about it.
Mm-hmm.
Most likely, I've been using the argument, hey, you might as well vote for Dr. West because the Republican's going to win anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever. But I always use the argument is, I don't like the fact that people think votes belong to Biden. Like, what has he done to earn them?
No.
Votes are earned, not you must. Well, orange man bad.
No, no
And I think
politician owns your vote.
you would think that. See, you're saying that because you have common sense and you have intelligence. But people on Facebook certainly don't because they don't come right out and say, "Oh, well, your vote belongs to Biden." It's like, well, you must vote for Biden because he's not Trump.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, because why? They do this thing called Orange Man Bad, Biden Good, and I'm like, maybe Orange Man bad, but Blue Man isn't too much better than Orange Man. And this kind of sets up my special that I will have, which I said I wasn't going to promote myself, called "Why Donald Trump is Not a Threat to Democracy," because I don't believe he is not the way that people set it up to be. Because I think that if we're going to say that, I don't think what Joe Biden is doing is like promoting democracy either. Um, Especially when you don't have debates. But we know Biden is a terrible debater. So the second one that I want to get to, second dumb argument. This is the one that infuriates. I say they all infuriate me. The first one just really gets me. But this second argument about Dr. West switching parties so much. You know, he started with the People's Party, then he went to the Green Party. Now he's independent. Now he's formed the Justice for All Party, which people don't understand quite why he formed that, which makes perfect sense to me, but nobody's doing that type of research. Um, what do you say to people who say, they wish Dr. West is more of a clown because he can't seem to make up his mind?
I'd say get over it. I'd say because the real issue there is how well that these parties represent the kind of program that you see in Dr. West's platform and in the platform of the broader left in this country. And political parties come and go. I'm to my honestly. I mean, I've been a Democrat since my dad bought in 1960 bought a big picture of JFK and plastered him in the picture window in our house. But at the same time, it's wrong to think that anybody is so bound to a political party that when a political party lets you down for whatever reason, whether it's programmatically or just in its functioning, that candidates, people, just ordinary folks, they don't have that kind of commitment. If you're so tied to a political party that you can't think for yourself, that's a problem. On the other hand, you need to make contact and connection with people who are like-minded to you. Political parties are a good way to do that. But I'd like to bring up something too here, and this is important. I told you I've been a member of Democratic Socialists for a long time. Well, our founding chair, a guy by the name of Michael Harrington, once wrote about this and said, they like to call the United States a two-party system. And then they'll say, no, it's really one party because nothing changes between the two of them. The differences are cosmetic. And the fact of the matter is, he said, we are a no-party system. We just have kind of polarities that people with the two big parties are just kind of drawn to every election year. And that we don't have an ideological party. It's you could say that the Democrats are liberal and the Republicans are conservative. Of course, with Donald Trump, the Republicans are fascist and authoritarian. The Democrats have never been particularly progressive party. So I don't take criticism when I hear people talk like that. I think, hey, get a life, man. You know, let it happen. And I've known people in the Green Party and the People's Party and so forth, and there are good folks, and there are people that can drive you up the wall. So hey, but it's not a question of what party you're so loyal to. It's a question of the principles you're loyal to, the ideals you want to hold, because you got to know where we're going. People got to know where we're going. It's one thing to say things are fouled up, screwed up. That's it. But it's another thing when you say, okay, but at least I know where we should be. And I think I have an idea as to how to work in that direction.
That was a very interesting answer because my answer was not as coherently put together as yours. I said, yeah, because see,
I'm rarely accused of that. I'll tell you. But go ahead.
I'm accused, and I'll say this: sometimes I can be very petty, and some of these criticisms against Dr. West have seemed to bring like the extreme pettiness out of me. I don't know why, but that comment to me is like, so it didn't matter whether RFK started off as a Democrat, which why would you run as a Democrat anyway? Then changed, then thought about being a libertarian, then finally ran as independent. That you can't criticize that, but you can criticize the People's Party, who isn't even on the ballot in what? They're not on the ballot in any state that I know of. Um, they don't have the structure to get um, access. The Green Party, I can see why he departed from the Green Party. It makes perfect sense to me, but it's hard for me to explain it to people because I think what he wants is to be more of an independent agent and not tied to a party, which that makes sense to me, right? But again, people are going to criticize. And I'm going to take a left, I'm going to kind of go left with this next question. It's not one of my five, but we talk about this. Seems like we talk about this every episode we have. We talk about the duopoly and the failures of the duopoly, the Democrat Republican system that we currently have, their inevitability, that we have two of the worst candidates that we've ever had run for president in Joe Biden and Donald Trump. My contention is what changes if either one of them wins. I know people say, well, Trump wants to be a dictator, but we have systems in place to stop that. We actually do. But I would like you to talk more about the failings of the two-party system and how you think that Dr. West can address those things.
Well, if I might, because I'm gonna let you. I'm gonna take this in. I'm gonna answer your question, but in a way perhaps you're not expecting. I think that one of the greatest weaknesses of the United States right at this moment is that we've let our Constitution rot for the last 60 years. Now, a Republican, somebody like Andy Horning, who you had on, he'd say, oh, yes, we got to get back to conservative capitalist principles. No, we don't. We need to come up with new institutions and new approaches because history is moving. It's passing us by. And we have a system that was designed by 55 guys in 1787 in Philadelphia. Of those 55 guys, 40 of them were creditors, and they were very interested in how to have a federal government that could enforce loan repayments by the states. And they didn't want them just printing money at the bank and paying back in essentially deflated, worthless dollars or whatever currency it was. Because in those days, you had tobacco was considered the monetary standard rather than gold. You get a block of tobacco. You put your worst tobacco in the middle, put a couple of good leaves on the end, and there you go. There's your deposit for the bank. That's where the system we have right now came from. And the two parties exist because they're being bought and sold by a system that was designed for the creditors. And it's 2024, and 1787 was what, 237 years ago. We need to upgrade in the Constitution. Yeah, Trump. I mean, I will say, look, Trump is a threat to the democracy, what little democracy we have in this country, because it's awful hard to ever say that this was a democracy. But even the small modicum of democracy that we have is in trouble now. It's in trouble because of the concentration of power of billionaires that are trying to dominate the life of the country, the life of the world, really, so that they can protect their fortunes. And the problem that we haven't done is to come back and change the Constitution. And one of the changes that I would make, and I'll give you a couple, one of the changes is I think we should abolish the United States Senate. I think the House of Representatives ought to be much more of a. Sorry about that. I'm here.
Okay.
Sorry
I'm like,
about
did he
that.
fall? Okay. Well, I think we're gonna kind of wait for Rob to get back. I hope he's okay. In the meanwhile,
I'm on with you.
Yeah,
Okay.
there he is, right there.
Sorry about that. Anyway, I think we should have a parliamentary system, and by that, what I mean by that is, when you put together a parliamentary government, you rarely have a government that gets a majority. But you can put together coalitions that form majorities. And so in that way, you can vote for third parties and it means something. And you're not necessarily in conflict with the larger mainstream party that might give you a better deal than the other one. And I think that's something definitely to think about. I also believe in proportional representation, the abolition of the electoral college. There are a lot of things that we can do to make this a more democratic society. And in fact, the failure here, I mean, Donald Trump didn't invent the attack on democracy. He just took advantage of it. But we have to campaign and work for a redemocratization. And we need to upgrade our Constitution so that it can better provide for democracy and human rights and has more guardrails against authoritarianism. So, that's my beat on it. I think that overcoming the two-party system in this country is only going to happen with some pretty radical changes, because the two parties are bought and sold by the same the same powers that be, and we're going to have to upset the apple cart on those powers that be, and we're going to have to make democracy actually work. Or as the late Tony Benn, a member of parliament, said, we need to move the power in society from the wallet to the ballot. To
Yep.
where, so that's what that's my position.
The only thing I take issue with what you said, and I agree with the majority, you forgot that the founding fathers were also slave owners.
Oh yeah, I know.
We always, I don't know why we forget that. We just forget that they thought, yeah, own people. That's a good thing. Because Nikki Haley seems to think America isn't a racist. Don't know. I'm like,
Oh,
you experienced it, so don't know about that. But what I want to talk about next is obviously the elephant in the room, the primaries. Now, as a third party candidate, we will not have a primary for Dr. West. We in Indiana, we have to get out and gather signatures. Some states he's formed a party so that ballot access becomes more obtainable.
mm-hmm.
Um, what kind of strategy do you think? Because I have a strategy in mind for the primary, but I don't know if people will agree with it.
Well, what do I think is a good strategy for the
Yeah.
primaries?
Yes. What do you think
Well,
is
I
it?
think that's when you obviously that's I think if you want to do it just in the electoral process, and believe me, I used to work so hard for Julia Carson and for Andre, and I haven't been able to do much for Andre the last few years because of my health. But I would say that that's where you focus on other races, I think, other political races, come on, competitions within the party to try to get the most progressive people in the Democratic Party you can. I mean, there's still the mechanism. Dr. West is running for president, and even if he wins,
You
okay,
mean when he wins?
he's still, well, okay, wait, but under that circumstance, you're still going to have a lot of the two parties in the Congress and in the legislatures. And, and those races mean a lot. So do school boards and lesser places. Those are areas that you can make a real contribution to the overall, um, uh, you know, status of the country. It's that old saying, uh, think globally, act locally. Well, that's part of acting locally. I mean, I think it's pretty obvious that Trump and Biden are just going to sweep the primaries. Uh, there's no surprise in that. So I think it's not going to be a terribly interesting primary season, but at least at the presidential level. But there's a lot going on among the uh, the candidates down the ballot, and those are critical needs as well, and need to be uh, and need support of people.
Yeah, your strategy is totally different from mine. I figured so. I'm like, yeah, just go in there and just show up to show up. Get the word. Don't vote for Biden. Period. No vote for Biden. I don't care if it's primary, general. Don't you vote for him. Dean Phillips, I don't know enough about him. So I figure, well, Marianne can't be that bad. At least she's somewhat progressive when she wants to be. But that's my theory. But I want to move to the other elephant in the room, the war in Gaza.
Yeah,
So we have literally had a president that has pledged his unequivocal support to Israel, then pretends to be concerned that so many Palestinians are being murdered, but then tells his donors he's against a two-state solution and against a ceasefire. Not only that, this president, because again, Trump wasn't president, and this conflict was always going, but the October 6th situation wasn't happening, so I can't say, well, Trump did this. But we know that Biden went around Congress, didn't even go through Congress to get additional monies. What do you think, or how do you believe that Dr. West would handle a situation like that that would be different from what Biden is doing?
I think he's shown more moral leadership. I mean, if you look at it, I mean, look, I will tell you right now, I've been suffering, and I mean suffering the last few months. What do I do? What do I do in the election next year? And then I realized, well, it's kind of hard to argue that you're trying to stop fascism when your candidate is bankrolling a uh, a genocide in Gaza. And I have been so moved by what's been going on in Gaza and how terrible it is. And I mean, this is one other place where Dr. West has been particularly inspiring to me. And that is, he talks about the importance of precious Jewish brothers and sisters and precious Arab and Muslim brothers and sisters. That's the attitude we need to actually be, the people in Gaza they don't deserve this. They don't deserve this. This isn't their war. They didn't fire the missiles on October 7th, but they're paying for it every day. Israel's ethnic cleansing. Why in the hell else would they have destroyed like 70% of the housing in Gaza and uprooted 90% of the population? And the death toll is probably way more. It hit 120. It hit 27,000 recently, but they know they got a lot more dead bodies in those ruins that nobody can get to, of the buildings that nobody can get to right now. And they also know that disease is starting to take hold in Gaza amongst the people who have been moved out of their homes and made refugees. So in that regard, there is a heavy-duty moral problem here. This is ugly, and we should be, in my opinion, we should be standing up for it better. I thought it was a terrible cop-out to go into the United Nations, and when it came to even a watered down call for a temporary ceasefire, the United States abstains. That's just failure in moral leadership.
Right. And as a member of the Security Council, which a lot of people don't, most people aren't going to realize this, when the United States abstains or votes no because they're a member of the Security Council, that's it. You could have every nation on earth vote for something, and if one of the five nations, China, Russia, USA, and the other two that I can't name, if one of those five says no, it's over.
Right.
There's no other alternative, and I think see, again, you're giving intellectual answers, and I just want to be just jumping out here and just saying anything. But what I think is, how dare you? We all know what the answer is. If we want a ceasefire, which is what most Americans support, most Americans support a ceasefire. The easiest answer is you stop giving them money. That will immediately stop the ceasefire.
Mm-hmm.
But as a Republican, I haven't heard the Republican Party say, you know what? I think Brad's disappeared again, but hopefully he'll come back. I haven't heard the Republican Party say, maybe we should stop giving them money. And that's probably why they didn't come back and say, Biden, you went around Congress and gave them more money because they're for it. Like I said, the easiest answer is to not give them money. That is the easiest answer. Brad, you're in the background, so let me bring you back on.
Yeah.
That's the easiest answer. That's just such a, even I know that. I know that. If you want a ceasefire, you say, look, Israel, we're going to stop giving you money.
Mm-hmm.
Guarantee we'll have and not just a temporary one, a permanent ceasefire. Not something that's gonna last a month or 2 weeks or a day or 4 hours or whatever it is they're proposing. But he can't do it because of AIPAC. AIPAC and other lobby groups that could care less about Judaism, less about, they aren't for the people of Israel. They could care less. They're for that oil that's there. They're for those resources that Israel has. Why all of this? Now we're bombing places in Iran.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean we're bombing places in Yemen to make
Syria,
the world safe for Saudi Aramco and ExxonMobil.
Exactly.
And those are the kind of it's hideous. It's morally wrong, morally decrepit. And people know that. People react to that, to the knowledge of that. The question is, do you have anyone with the guts to stand up, to the big money? Look at the Republican Party. Look at the Republican Party. None of them will stand up to Trump, even though most of them know what a creep he is, and also that how dangerous the man is for so many things. And yet they won't say anything. They're afraid of him. Well, that gets multiplied 1,000 times when you're dealing with these heavy-duty billionaires that control the fossil fuel industry in the world. And it's like it's harder and harder and harder for people to stand up. The only way people are ever going to stand up to that power structure is through solidarity, and not simply in the United States, but international solidarity. And they're going to have to stand for some moral principles. And they're going to have to keep steadfast. And there's going to be a lot of struggle. That's why I said when I first came on that the most important thing of all, to me, is building the connections with people so that we can fight the struggle. The election decides who's going to be in an office, but history decides what's going to happen to people. And we hope that the politicians can help us with that. And some of them we can be pretty sure of. I think I know I can vouch for Dr. West. He's on the side of the people. But we're up against tremendous odds. And I can remember being in Los Angeles in 1993 at the 1993 Democratic Socialist National Convention and seeing Dr. West speak in a forum called Breaking Bread Together. And he mentioned, he says that in history, he says democracies don't last long. Go read your history. You got to make it work. Tony Benn used to say, there's no final victory, no final defeat for democracy. You have to, every generation has to learn the same lessons and fight the same battles. It's a constant struggle. And that's what we got to have people involved in.
Yep. And so we're going to get right back to the next argument that makes me infuriated, makes me want to throw something against the wall. The now is not the time. Let me tell you, before I let you answer, I'm just going to go on my rant about the now is not the time argument that people keep telling me. I want to know when do they do two things. One, they always move the goalposts. So now is not the time. 4 years from now is not the time. 4 years down the road, 8 years down the road, 20 years down the road, no time. What they're really saying is no time is ever going to be the time.
So,
I've heard AOC say this. I don't even like to say Bernie's name because I think he sold us out, but that's a whole different show. Now is not the time when you have a threat like Trump or whatever Republican. But my thing is the Democratic Party has did this ever since I became a voter in 1992. First, it was George Bush, Father Bush. Then it was George W. Bush. Then it was the threat of Mitt Romney. Then after that, who came after Romney? Oh no, it was John McCain, but he wasn't much of a threat. But then it was Mitt Romney. It's always these convenient, let's throw in a Republican, make you scared, and say, maybe you should run down the road. And I'll say this before I let you answer the question. The Democratic Party is that boyfriend that always says he's going to do right, and he never does right. Never does he do right, but he says, if you give me one more chance, and I'll do it, and never does it. But somehow people keep supporting this, which is what I don't understand. And now I will get off my soapbox and let you answer.
well, it's hardly new. It's been going on ever since I've been an adult, and it was going on a long time before that. The message, had Hillary Clinton cut the message about, well, you just can't do that. You're going to have to wait. If she'd cut that out, she probably would have beaten Trump.
Oh
But
no, she
she
wouldn't have.
didn't do that. But well, that's just that's neither here nor there. But what I would
Yeah.
say is that that is such a bankrupt argument that it's not really worth the time, because what they're saying is, gee, if you'll just be play nice doggy roll over dead for us, maybe in 10 or 20 years we'll cut you off a couple of thin slices of the loaf.
Yeah, I mean,
You
Joe.
want the whole loaf, but we're not going to give it to you. We'll just give you a couple of slices. And oh, by the way, we're going for thin slice this year.
Yeah, thin, very thin.
Yeah.
I mean, literally, I have my top 5 issues, and one of them is Medicare for all. This is what I had to
Hmm.
tell a Democrat person who said, no, you should vote for Joe Biden because he's done what? I keep asking. Well, he's not Trump. That's the whole argument. But I'll say it in this way, and hopefully it makes sense. Well, now is not the time. And I keep asking, okay, tell me when the time is. And then when you tell me when the time is, and it's years ago, what you really should be saying is, you don't think that you're okay with the system the way that it is. You're okay with billions of dollars going to Ukraine and going to Israel and going to fund all these wars, and you're okay with homelessness rising the way that it is. You're okay
Hmm.
with Americans. You're okay with that because if you can look out on the scope of what this nation is facing, and I'm not saying don't give foreign aid because I believe more in humanitarian aid like food, water, medicine,
Hmm.
those type of things. AIDS, I stand behind that. What I don't stand behind is giving a known genocider, Netanyahu, billions of dollars and you're ignoring, to me, what's going on at home. And I know the president, well, no, I'm going to stop saying that. The president can't do anything unless he passes. Because let's be honest, when Biden went around Congress to get more money for Israel, he literally just proved to me, oh, president doesn't need Congress for what? He literally went around Congress. Didn't even come back and say, I think we need more money. He's like, no, I'm
And
just gonna
when's the
give
last time a
more.
Democrat did that for poor people?
Thank you. That's my point. It's like it would be nice if we had instead of him saying if Medicare for all gets to my desk, I'll veto it. And saying, we should approve on the awful, terrible, terrible. The Affordable Care Act is terrible. I'm gonna keep saying it. It's terrible. It's terrible. It's terrible. But for some reason, y'all keep trying to sell me this. If it's not Medicare for all, I don't want to hear. I don't want to hear about the public option. I don't want to hear about anything else except for Medicare for all. He says, "Oh, I'll veto it. I'm going to vote for you." No, it does not work that way.
Well, let me frame my answer in a historical sense. You said, "Oh, is it the time for this? Time for this?" Well, I'll tell you what. The time for the National Health Service in Great Britain was 1948, and it does quite well, and it didn't have very many problems until the Tory party got in and started making budget cuts and trying to sell off assets to the big corporations. Now, one of the good things about Dr. West's platform is he goes beyond Medicare for all. I was part of the first single payer system efforts in the state of Indiana with the Indiana Democratic Socialist organizing committee that we had set up, and also with friends and comrades in Citizens Action Coalition and United Senior Action and a few others for a single payer system for Indiana. This is going back to 1991. I actually got to be in a meeting with people from Canada who explained, they were from the New Democratic Party and the labor unions, and they explained what the Canadian healthcare system was about. And I've been all gung ho for it. The problem with Medicare for all is it keeps the big corporations in the game. It gives the medical capitalism oxygen to breathe. I don't want to give it any oxygen to breathe. I think we need a full national health care service. A full, socialized medicine. You're damn right.
Darn right, because
And
I don't allow cursing on my platform.
okay, sorry about that. But
I'll
I'm
slide.
getting at the point. My point is just simply that as long as you leave the profiteers in it, they're going to find their motivation is going to make profit, not to deliver the best to the patient, not to be socially responsible. Their motivation is to make money. And they'll cut the corners and they will go for where the money is, and they'll leave the people who don't have money out in the cold. That cannot be. Because you see, all of this is a question of the dignity of the human being, of human dignity, of common humanity as your franchise in the society. That's what needs to be understood. It's not your dollars and cents. It's your very humanity, the very fact that you're here and you have, you have more rights than than what they're letting you have, and you should have the same rights as everybody.
And I don't know if I call myself a Medicare for all activist, but I guess I am. It's
I've been there.
amazing that that within the Democratic Party, because I don't consider myself a Democrat, that 87% of Democrats are for Medicare for all, and yet Joe Biden clearly says, "Oh, if it gets to my desk, I'll veto it." Well, wonder why he says that. If you look at I think it's called Open Secrets or whatever that website is, you look to see who's donating money to whom. I'm like, oh, well, this is the answer right here. If somebody knows that site, could you put it in a comment section? Because I can never think of that site. Because I'm curious. They're saying these things, and Trump does it too, because corporations are literally saying, hey, if I'm the corporation, I'm going to get to my last thing about what criticism about Dr. West I think is silly, but I want to say this. If I'm the corporation, they're basically investing little money and getting this great big outcome. If I'm evil corporation, why do I want to stop this? Why do I want to stop this when I can spend the very bare minimum money and I'm getting $1 billion contracts? Why? It doesn't make. I mean, it makes sense to me to get money out of politics. It makes sense to me to have publicly financed elections, but it's
Look
not
where
going to make sense to Joe Biden, Donald Trump, RFK, cis
look
people.
where look where the the major parties and candidates go to start enlisting their fundraising. They go to Mr. Blankfein at Goldman Sachs. They go to Wall Street. They go to the big brokerage houses. They go to the what do you call them? The hedge funds.
Mm-hmm.
They go all over looking for the money men. Now, I got news for you. Two politicians owned by the same money is no improvement in the world. That's what I was trying to make a point with Andy Horning the other day. That you just think you're gonna if you think you're just gonna have term limits for and that's gonna do it. Forget it. He knew that I was right. He even admitted it. That if two politicians are owned by the same money, it's not going to make much difference to the people down at the bottom. And so and when the politicians go and have their campaigns to get their jobs and their immense power. And they get it from Goldman Sachs and used to be Lehman Brothers and a few others I can't think of right off the bat. But when they go there, they're aligning themselves with the powers that be. And that's what's hurting all of us.
Yep. And here comes the last two that I cannot stand about criticisms about Dr. West. There's a difference between a legitimate criticism, such as there's no written plan. To me, that's a legitimate criticism because that's something you can just answer by putting your whole platform on the website, but you're not going to read it.
Mm-hmm.
Says the person who, I mean, most Americans have the attention of a microwave oven. The one criticism I think really makes me angry, and I mean this one makes me I think it infuriates me because it seems to be rooted in racism, is that
Mm-hmm.
he doesn't pay his child support. That one to me is about the most racist because what they're saying is here's a black man because Dr. West is black.
Mm-hmm.
He's not. This is what black men do. They don't pay their child support, and that one that that one gets to me. One because I'm a black American, but I don't. Am I wrong in saying Dr. West has children my age?
Mm-hmm.
No, am I wrong? I'm asking.
Hmm. I really don't know. I really
But
don't know what age they are.
I mean, the first call I saw had at least two of his children on it because I know he has three children. I think he
Mm-hmm.
has three children, and all three of those. I haven't heard his children say, he was a terrible father. He wasn't in our lives. But the media keeps going with this one, and it. I mean, it literally gets to me because I'm like, how dare you suggest? Here you go, suggesting another black man not meeting his responsibilities.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why that one makes me the
It's
angriest.
part of the divide and conquer. It's part of what's called the I think it's called the ad hominem fallacy. You know, you blame the messenger instead of the message. You go after the messenger rather than the message. It's part of the fundamental underlying racism on the ground in the United States of America, because the way that racism and bigoted white people have maintained their power has been through that kind of intimidation and innuendo and distortions of the facts, because they can get certain people to believe it who want to believe it. You
That's
know, it's
such a
very
good
interesting.
point.
It's very interesting in my point of view. It's very interesting. I don't know if you've ever read a book called The People's History of the United States by Howard Zinn. And he made a point that in the early years of the Republic, in states where there was no slavery and where you had black and white sharecroppers and farmers living in close proximity to each other, the racial frictions weren't there. It's not until you get into the point where the big money interests are involved and they need to keep the workers at each other's throat so that they can maintain their power. It's called divide and conquer. And so they will prey on any kind of social bigotries they can. They don't want that to die, because if we all got together, like you and me are getting together right now, if that would happen on a real large scale, for people who have the one interest together, which is they don't own a lot of capital, they're workers. Their capital in life are their bodies and their minds. We get together, we can take these guys down. And that's what they're afraid of.
And that's why they would be afraid of Dr. West, because
Yeah.
he's a representation of that.
Yeah.
He's been an activist. I mean, he said that that's the one thing I appreciate about Dr. West is he's been consistent in what he
Mm-hmm.
believes.
Mm-hmm.
And I can tell it's coming from an authentic place. Um, I can. Someone was like, "Well, can you guarantee that he'll stay the same?" Because we do have politicians that will say one thing out of office and then they decide, oh, my name is John Fetterman, let me change everything that I believe, and do that. And I said, I don't think that Dr. West would do that. One, because he's been saying the same thing for over 40 years.
Mm-hmm.
I, I don't see it. And when you're not beholden to money,
Mm-hmm.
oppression, or fascism, because I contend we have fascism now, not
Mm-hmm.
something that Trump will bring fascism. No, we're living in fascism now.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to argue against Dr. West.
Well, it is.
It's
It
really,
is.
I'm like, what can I say? His platform, everything on it, I'm like, I'm in full agreement with. There's
Dr.
nothing on it. Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, but Dr. West is very, very, very aware of history. And all you're talking about there are things that have been seen throughout the history of this country and throughout, in many ways, the history of the Western world. He is very aware of people like Fannie Lou Hamer and some of those folks and their contributions. He is going to be very, very consistent because he understands the place in history that we're at. and he understands that there is a moral principle involved. So I wish more politicians had that. Not many do.
Yeah, it's really hard. In a world of John Fetterman's, be a Cornel West. That's what I'll say. Um, and the last one that I think annoys me is the taxes. Um, of course, we all know Dr. West owes taxes. Like, who doesn't? But apparently, for some Democrats, they found a spine. I'm like, we literally, Trump owed millions in taxes. I don't think we've ever had a president owes as much as he is. The media will just sidestep his, but when Dr. West owes it, oh, well, he's irresponsible with money. Or I'm like, but he's paying his. What American doesn't owe something? You know, I
Mhm.
owe a mortgage. I owe a student loan. I owe. I owe. I owe. I never understood the tax argument.
Owing is the way that you're controlled. If you're beholden to somebody, they can control you. And so if you make a big point about whether you're in debt or whether you're in debt to back taxes, you know, there's always that sitting in the back of your head. Now with a billionaire capitalist, that owing is something to get rid of. Oh, it just takes away investment. And if you're a worker, it's how they beat you to death so that you'll be sure to be at the job on Monday so you can pay your bills. It's a lot of it's a control game. When they do that with a presidential candidate, they just look up dirt. They want to smear somebody because he's dangerous to them. It's a danger. If people actually know how they're getting ripped off by the billionaire class, how they're getting ripped off by the banks, how when the government is run by the wrong people, they're getting ripped off. What we want is a government, a democracy that is beholden to the people, that does what the people need, not what the billionaires need.
And last question or last thought, I always give my guests an opportunity before I do that. Everyone, I need you to visit this website, cornelwest2024.com. On this website, there is a link to donate. I'm sure the campaign will not get angry at me saying this. Your one, two, three, four, $5 donation and up helps. Go to the website and contribute. I'm asking all of the Cornel West um, supporters, which I know they are out there because you're looking at two of them, to go to that website and support. They do give you an option to mail in your donation in case you don't want to use your debit or credit card, but mail something. Put put $3 in. That really is going to help the campaign because they can't. It takes. Unfortunately, we don't have publicly financed elections.
Mhm.
Until we get publicly financed elections, we need that campaign. And I said we like I'm a part of the campaign, but the campaign needs your donations. So go to that site that's right there. Donate to the campaign. I'm sure they won't say, no, Tracy, don't you say that. Because I'm pretty much telling the truth. Campaigns need money. Also,
Right.
what you want to do is you can go to that same site and volunteer. I know here in Indiana, we're starting to reach out to people to help us gather signatures. I'm not going to get into that discussion because that's a 2 hour discussion all by itself. But we're trying our best to get them on the ballot in our state. There's a few states, if he forms a new party, it becomes easier. You can sign up to be a volunteer and someone will contact you. But again, go to that website. And finally, Brad, I would like you to tell everyone, in your opinion, why Dr. West needs to be president of the United States.
Because we need a future. And the future right now, as it looks, is very, very bleak. When you think about all the war that's going on, when you think about the ways that the corporations are abusing the planet, when you think about the ways that people are exploited in this world, when you think about the wars that are going on now, and it's getting larger and larger and more deadly all the time, we have to have someone who is willing to put human values and common decency into power. Men and women into the institutions that can change things. That's the most important thing there as far as who's in office. But also, like I said, you got to help, because no matter what happens, there's a struggle, and it's going to keep going after the election. And people need to get together. They need to overcome the differences and get together and struggle for a better world, and struggle for a greater recognition of human um, uh, human decency and dignity and common humanity. And that's what this campaign is really all about. And so that's why I'm saying, it's important what happens this year. It's also important what happens next year. And don't lose faith on anything going to 2025. And don't sit back. And if you do get Dr. West in the White House, don't sit back and think that that's it, because you're going to have to be part of the struggle too. It's not going to happen without the people at the grassroots, because one person can't do it alone. So that would be my message.
Thank you so much for coming on, everybody. In the conclusion, again, CornelWest2024.com, CornelWest2024.com. Remember to like this video, share this video on your platforms. Here's a new one. Tag Dr. West. Everyone keeps asking me, Tracy, will Dr. West come on your show? Tag him. Literally tag him. Literally tag him in this and say, there's a person in Indianapolis, Indiana that has a show with your name on it. You should be a guest. But seriously, in all seriousness, do that. But in all seriousness, share this video, like this video. If you watch it after we get off the air, put your comments in. I never get comments on my videos on the podcast about Dr. West, and I would love to get even those who don't want to be supporters of Dr. West so I can answer them. Put your comments in the comment section. But again, thank you for your time. Thank you, Brad, for coming. I'll see you, of course, Monday. But I want to thank everyone that watched, didn't comment. That's okay. Have a great day, and hopefully I'll see you all next week with a different person I'll be interviewing. Have a fantastic week. Bye-bye.